let's time out here. We got students that we're seeing with mental health. We have kids that are now even more obese. We have students that are suicidal. So they were seeing these patients and they said, okay, this is enough.
Welcome to Nashville Current Podcast. I am your host, Ed Clay, and today we have Fran Bush. How you doing, Fran?
I'm doing great, doing awesome. Thank you for the invitation. I appreciate it.
Now you're very welcome. I'm extremely excited to have you on, and it's been. I saw a story on Fox 17 with Dennis Ferrier, and that kind of alerted me to, alerted us to really what you had been going through. And we like long form conversation because a lot of times you get one story over here, you get another story over here, and people don't get to really tell their story, and people misinterpret the meaning of certain things. So I'm really glad that you're able to come.
Thank you.
So first, tell her where are you from exactly in Nashville?
So I am originally, I was born and raised in Nashville, Tennessee. I have lived here all my life. I'm currently reside in Antioch, Tennessee. It is growing tremendously in that area, so we're really excited about the growth. And I have 5 amazing boys. They're all doing awesome. I have 3. The oldest 3 are in college, and I have 2 in high school. And I have an awesome husband who puts up with me every day. And being outnumbered, of course, I'm a little spoiled, but it's a good thing.
Okay, so you have 5 boys.
5 boys.
Plus there's 6
right.
in the house. So
Right. So I am so totally outnumbered. So I just kind of go to my space when I just feel like the guys are doing their thing, right?
Right.
But I'm a big football girl, love my Titans, and I'm just a football girl when I get into the sports with my guys. You know, I have to be there with them. So, yeah.
And you went to school here in Nashville growing up?
I did. I went to McGavick High School, graduated in 92. Then I went on to go to the Tennessee State University, where I majored, and first major was nursing, and then I decided to go into healthcare administration and planning.
Oh, wow. And so right now, what are you doing in healthcare administration?
So really, I've kind of pivoted from that field, but I love it. I love to keep up with the science and health-related issues because, of course, having kids and, of course, being healthy myself means a whole lot. So I currently have my own childcare business, and it resides in Antioch. And I've been doing that now for about 15 years. And I also am a school board member. Yeah.
Yeah, and how long have you been a member of the school board?
So this is my 3rd year. 4th year next year will be my 4th year. And so I've been doing this. I've learned a whole lot. I've always been very involved with education, of course, having the children. Always been involved with MMPS because they all went through MMPS and are still going through MMPS. And so I've been a very involved mother, you know, staying on top of what's happening. And education is so important, of course. And, you know, here in Nashville, we have a good system. We just have to do better with our system because we've lost a lot of gains. And, you know, with leadership after leadership, it continues to just kind of stay stagnant is what I'm starting to see. So I also volunteer with different organizations to help our kids to get ready for college and career. So I'm really invested, should I say, in education.
So, okay, you know, I went to Overton High School, graduated in 1999. So I've been out of high school for 22 years, basically. And I'm sure I don't have any kids, so there's probably a lot that has changed. But first of all, how many school board members are there, and what's the process to become a school board member?
So there's 9 school board members, and each school board member represents a district. So, for example, I am in District 6, and I represent the largest portion of Davidson County with our schools. Again, this is the fastest growing area, which is the southeast part of town, and so that district. Each school district may have between 18 and 22 schools. So I'm about 22 schools plus charter schools that are being built. So we are expanding, and we are going to begin another middle school. So the expansion is huge in that area. So each board member represents their own district, their own constituents, but I will say a lot of constituents don't know who their school board members are. So they will call a school board member that they feel that is like myself, very vocal, very passionate. They see my fight, my will. And so they'll reach out to those board members that they feel comfortable with.
Okay, so you have 9 school board members, and then what's the head called? The
So we have one employee with this, which is the superintendent,
superintendent, yeah.
and her name is Dr. Adrian Battle. She also has she's lived here all her life, and when we decided to choose her as our director of schools, one of the real many reasons why we decided to go with Dr. Battle is because she was homegrown.
Sure.
So that made
Where'd
sense.
she go to high school?
She went to Overton High School.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she went to
Okay,
Overton.
that's
Yeah.
cool. Okay, so you have 9 school board members and then the superintendent, and then you vote on policy that affects all the kids in the district.
So yeah, when it comes to our policies, most of our policies are established by like a school board association. So the Tennessee School Board Association pretty much helps facilitate and support policies for public or urban school districts. And so policies normally are already created, and that's something that we follow when it comes to our policy. Now we can vote to change a policy or go through a governance process to do so. And it doesn't happen often, but it can happen.
Okay, and so where would you say that what is Davidson County doing good at? And then let's talk about what we have some work on as well.
Currently, we've seen how, of course, COVID has been. It's just been horrible, right? It has really affected our lives for the past year almost, and we know that change has happened. We haven't been able to move in a direction like the planning of future things that we had on our books or things that we had in our future that we wanted to do after COVID hit. And one of the things about our schools is that we knew that we were going into a direction that we were going to have to make some tough decisions about having kids in the classrooms, right? So when COVID hit last March, that's when our students came home. We went straight to virtual learning, and we didn't know how that space and place was going to look for virtual. So teachers, students, administration, it was almost like a test, right? No one really knew how to work with virtual learning. So there was a planning committee over the summer that consists of doctors, community leaders like John Cooper, Dr. Jahanger. So they came together as a task force. Dr. Battle was on that task force to try to figure out how we were going to move our schools forward. And summer planning was happening, and we thought we were going to get the kids back in school when the numbers were down. Mm-hmm. And we didn't take that opportunity to get those students back into the classroom. And we were highly advised and recommended by a doctor, Catherine Edwards. She's one of the well-known names, not only in the city, but across this country. She's an epidemiologist in immunization and in children. Mm-hmm. And so she highly recommended us to get them back in school. We can do this safely. And at that time, the governor, that's when we were getting a lot of funding for PPE so that we can put things into the classroom safely, things that they needed, sanitizer, bleach, whatever the case may be, to make sure that we can combat safety if the kids will go back into the classroom. So fast forward, we didn't do that. We didn't take advantage of that. So that really hurt our children and our staff, because if we would have gotten back into in the classroom, August, September, we knew the peak was going to go up maybe October, November, of course, because that's what happens with the flu, right? So we didn't take that opportunity. That opportunity could have been a chance for students to get to know their teachers, to be able to touch, see, get instructions on what virtual looks like, give them an opportunity to practice, be able to navigate, and we missed that opportunity.
So what was the argument against going back in August?
I was very disappointed because those on the task force, like Mayor Cooper and Dr. Jahanger, they were more in control. And they basically convinced Dr. Battle to me to go along with what they felt that was appropriate to get the students back in the classroom and not listen to science. You have to listen to science. We know that, right? You study it, you know it, and you know what works. And we missed that opportunity. And because we missed that opportunity, it hurt our students.
What was the? I've interviewed Dr. Jahanger, and he seems like a reasonable guy. I've met with Mayor Cooper, and different opinion, but they do seem like they listen. What was the conversations between them, and what did they say was their reasoning, or did they?
Well, and I will say, and respectfully, when I say this, I want to give you my opinion of what I felt at the time that could have been corrected, and because of the knowledge that was given, or the recommendations that were given, Dr. Edwards walked away. We have a very not only advanced but experienced medical professional who was trying to advise us in a direction that would have saved a lot of our students, and she wasn't listened to. And that to me was a red flag.
So was Dr. Edwards, was she hired by the Metro or by Metro to do anything? Or how was she involved?
Exactly. So, good question. So what happened is they came up with a task force, and this task force consisted of doctors, other leaders in the community, principals, that kind of thing, that were on this committee that was making the decisions, that were making recommendations. And so that's kind of how she was a part of this process.
Okay. And so you have an epidemiologist saying, this isn't what the science is saying,
Yes.
which, in reality, the science has been politicized from my view. Trust science. Trust science has almost got to be it's a joke, because we haven't been trusting the science. We haven't gone with the data. And I think that there's some good intentions, but there's also saving face that's going on too in politics. So did she walk away because, the motto's trust science and go with the data, but they weren't doing it?
Yeah, I think that her knowledge and her experience was definitely not respected. And at that point, what you just said is how she and other doctors felt, is that they didn't want to be a part of the politics of what was happening with MMPS. And when I heard that, I thought, wow.
So what were the politics going on with the public schools? Like what was the argument to stay closed?
Well, I know we spent a lot of money on virtual learning. We spent about $5 million on it.
Okay.
And at that time, I voted on it because I didn't understand it at first, because we didn't get a demo. We didn't know how it works. We didn't get a laptop in front of us to show us, to navigate, to see how it was going to impact our students. And so because of that ignorance, we just didn't know until it all happened, and it has been a complete disaster.
Yeah, I mean, the idea that children can learn as well online, at least in this day and age. 20 years from now, there might be we might be in a different place, or we will be in a different place, but that they can learn as well online as they can in person. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Are they suggesting that they can?
Well, in the virtual space, suppose have only been temporary, not permanent. And I understood that during a time, again, going back into October, November, where the peak was going to be a spike, right? But we didn't take the opportunity to get the students back in the classroom soon and give them that opportunity to have that relationship with their teachers. Because if they would have had the relationship with their teachers, they would have trusted the process.
Sure.
And they didn't.
Well, and so were the questions being asked, that's why I keep asking, like, why did they not open up? I think that they'll acknowledge that COVID isn't a big danger to children under 18. There are some bad cases, but for the most part, not so much. I think that, like I said, from the outside, I don't know the details of this. I would guess that their concern would be spreading it to teachers. Is that what they were worried about, or spreading it, or bringing it from the classroom to home and it's spreading that way.
And to your point, yes, that was one of the fears, that the students were going to pass it to the teachers and the schools were super spreaders. And that was not the case. Again, the science was the science, because that wasn't the case. According to Dr. Edwards, she said, no, we can still get these students back into the classroom safely, and we can utilize and be able to get that PPE we needed and be able to move forward. And if it does happen, it's going to happen. We're not saying there's not going to be any positive cases. We know that it was going to be positive cases. That's the reason why you have the CDC guidelines and protocols to be able to address them, right? Because all the private schools were doing it. Okay, and then we also had, neighboring districts that were doing it. Now, they may have taken 2 steps back because of cases, closing a classroom, cleaning, that kind of thing. But they also took 3 steps forward to get the students back in the classroom, because they knew it was going to be a detriment to the students.
Sure. And, I could see, the science doesn't back that the children are going to be spreading it. As you pointed out, so that's going to be my next question. But what do you do with a teacher who is at high risk? How do we protect them? Because, I don't think it's a risk to the children. I mean, it's not much more than the flu for the children. But, you get somebody who has a couple comorbidities, is at a certain age, and then if that teacher were to get it, she could have a bad outcome. What do you say, or how do we protect her or him?
Absolutely. And that is one of the things that we wanted to make sure that we supported, because we knew that we had teachers with underlying health conditions, or they were caring for family members that had underlying health conditions. So what we did was we did surveys. We've done our 3rd survey to ask those teachers, tell us about your health history. Tell us, are you able to go into the classroom? So that way we can be able to determine those teachers who needed to stay virtual. So that's what we did. We did that. We did it we did it around April, and then we did it again right before the school year, and then we did it again in October.
Okay, so you identified the teachers that were, at highest risk.
Yes.
And so if a teacher said, hey, I have this combination of comorbidities, I'm at high risk, you didn't make her go back into the classroom in person.
No. Now, there were some cases that I did hear teachers say, well, Fran, I have X, Y, and Z, but I wasn't approved. So there were some concerns from teachers, and that's where my advice was, you go back to HR, you go back and you let them know. And, doctors, of course, had to sign off. They had to go through like a little process to prove that they were what they needed
risk.
and the support we had to give to them. So, and yes, going back to the students, it was just a lot of excuses of why we couldn't get the kids back in the classroom. And so that's when the politics, to me, I started to notice what's going on.
Yeah, where is, so because like I said, I didn't know much about this. If you took away the high risk people, if you were to look at like the demographics of people that have been dying of COVID, the children, less than 250, I believe, nationwide, mostly with lots of, pre-existing conditions. And it goes up, like I believe 85 plus, it's like 33%, 75 to 84, and like 26, 27%, 65 to 74, 23% of all deaths. So, and it goes down with age. As of December 23rd on the CDC website, and I'm going from memory here, but I believe it was less than 8,000 people had died under the age of 45. And so if you really take in those numbers, it's like 1 in 5,000. You're twice as likely under the age of 50 to die in a car accident going to work every week than you are of dying of COVID, if you get it. And when you break those numbers down within the demographics, we're not saying I haven't hugged my mom since March. That's how serious I take it for those at-risk groups. But I can't do it for younger people as far as potential death outcome. It's the odds are not likely if you're relatively healthy.
Yeah, and that's where we were not doctors were feeling like we were not following the science. So we, recently, not jumping ahead, but I just mention and kind of piggyback about what you're saying is that we had a a petition that was done by doctors in this city. And we had doctors that were from different backgrounds, and those who specialized in epidemiology or just medical, just a medical practitioner, whatever the case may be, and not just here in the city, but neighboring counties jumped on board and signed a petition. 45 doctors and counting at the time we received the email, and said to Dr. Battle, "We're not understanding the metrics that you're coming up with, but we don't see what you're seeing. So therefore, you need to get these children back in school now." That's what they said. Because we're the science, we're the medical professionals. We do this every single day. So we're confused, and we're having concerns about the metrics.
So have we locally though had a medical counter to those doctors though that say, no, this is going to be a super spreader?
So it goes back to the politics.
Okay.
You still have not every doctor signed on. Sure. Because they didn't want to get involved in the back and forth. But those who did sign on saying, "Hey, let's time out here. This is becoming too much." We got students that we're seeing with mental health. We have kids that are now even more obese. We have students that are suicidal. So they were seeing these patients, and they said, "Okay, this is enough. We're going to have to figure this out, and we're going to have to stand up and speak up."
Yeah, I mean the mental health aspect of this for the kids, it's got to be horrible. I mean, when this was going down in March, and I actually said this when I was interviewing Dr. Jahanger for that first interview, and I said, I think that the response to COVID is going to cause more deaths or problems than actually COVID. And I think, worldwide, if you look at hunger, what's going to happen, they're expecting 100 million more people to go into poverty. If you look at the suicide rates, you're going to see, I want to get into the city, but you're going to see suicides in the 25 and under age group, probably 10x the amount of COVID deaths in that same age group. And people need to let that sink in. Suicide will likely kill 10 times or more people than COVID will under the age of 25. And it seemed to me, as someone who's been an advocate for mental health for a long time, that they didn't really seem to care or even think about that when making their decision. Was that your experience?
Absolutely. I could not understand the life of me why all of these different factors that was going to harm and hurt these students, mental health, suicide. I would even go with, more poverty. It's almost like, because, most of public schools are made up with students that are more socially, economically disadvantaged. So we got the Black and brown kids. We have kids that don't have that support. So for the life of me, I kept thinking to myself, look at the detriment that's happening to these students. And they did not care about the detriments. I raised them. I kept screaming about it. And it was completely ignored until parents got more involved. And that's when, and lawmakers, everybody started getting involved with, okay, hold on. You mentioned Las Vegas. We lost so many kids from suicide, and they had to open up their schools.
It doubled.
Yeah.
How are we doing in Metro with suicides? Do we have any data?
We don't have data. I saw that, and I wanted to I asked physicians about it, if do they have numbers? Do they, what's the outcome? And right now it's you couldn't really measure it because either, again, teachers were not able to see students. We were not able to see these students to know where they are or if something happened to them bad. Because, we've lost a lot of students. We now have students that are called virtual dropouts. We don't know where they are. We have a lot of seniors that will not graduate this year because they gave up. This is not what they signed up for, right? You go to school 3 years, 3.5 years, almost going to your fourth year. And they understood that this was a deadly disease. They understood that. I talked to students. But what they couldn't understand is why Metro and not the other students. So they were looking at their peers in neighboring counties, in the district, and they were trying to figure out what makes us so different. Why are we being punished?
Well, it's the idea of being abandoned.
Yeah.
I mean, whether see, I have to believe the intentions were good with all the school board members and Dr. Battle and everybody. And so I don't want to attack anybody's intentions on this, but I would, you have to think about 5 years from now what we're going to be looking back and saying.
Yeah.
And, we can get caught up in fear, or we can allow hope to seep in. And, this is a symptom of all of our society, I think, if you look at it. The mental illness aspect, just about everybody I know over the last 12 months has faced some depression.
Yeah.
It's hard not to. It's, you have so much division politically between the right and the left. You have, you're wrong. You have very little grace that goes on. People are getting canceled. It's just these mobs of people. And that brings about more fear in society. Like, oh, I don't want to say this because I don't want to be, have the mob attack me, whoever the mob is. It could be both. I could be the right mob or the left mob. But we forgot that, if you sit down and actually talk to somebody, sit in a crowd, I don't know your political beliefs, it doesn't really matter, but we could have opposite political beliefs. And when we start talking, we realize we have a lot more in common than we have against each other. When you look at, the school board members that however this is getting voted on, however we're saying you can't go back to school, whoever's, if we're to sit down and really dig in, you'd probably feel like we have a lot more in common. Do they really want the best for the children? Yes, at least we can agree on that. How do we actually move forward? Do we believe it's science or data? Like, it seems to me that people are so afraid to make decisions based on the mob that they don't actually make the best decisions for what their job is telling them to make the decisions for.
Yeah. And I truly wanted to give my colleagues the benefit of the doubt. Even when I was just out there by myself, just chugging away, trying to make sure that students play their sports, making sure that, that they have some type of normalcy of being a student and having opportunities. Because remember, we have students that depend on scholarships in order to go to college because their family don't have that money, the means. So my thought was totally different mindset, but I could not get why my colleagues were not there to support that. But then later reality was they made a decision to, allow Dr. Battle to have complete autonomy. And that's not what we should have done. This is our one employee. And if all of us came together and understood exactly what we're saying, this would have changed a long time ago. Because the other board members would have said, we're holding you accountable. We see what we see. We know what we know. But we need you to find a way, if it's through strategic planning, whatever the case may be, to get these students back in the classroom safely, in person, giving parents options. And that didn't happen. If it would have happened, this would have changed a long time ago.
What did the other school board members, what did they say? What's their position on this?
It was more fear.
Fear?
It was more fear.
Fear of?
Schools being super spreaders.
Okay.
Teachers. Now, so I'm gonna kind of go back a little bit. And when I say teachers, we have a teachers union. You may have seen across this country how the teachers unions have been pretty much the muscle behind students going back to in the classroom, because they started to have demands, more money, more ventilation, something that we didn't care about before, and strike. They went on strike. They didn't want to go back to the classroom. And so when you have unions that are that powerful, which I did not realize that until I stepped in the hornet's nest, and they came after me. But that was supposed to happen, because this is why they're in school today. Because everyone said, okay, we're done. I got a chance to talk to Governor Lee. He called me. He said, I'm going to do everything I can. His cares were about the students, and mental health was one of his number one concerns for the students, and of course the learning loss. So everybody started banding together at that point and working together to figure out and pretty much put pressure. Now, they'll say it doesn't have anything to do with political pressure,
Sure.
but it did. It did.
Yeah, it kind of reached that boiling point.
Yeah.
So I guess in the community, did the parents want the kids to go back to school? Was that or are there a lot of parents that don't?
Yeah, so we had this phenomenal group, Let Nashville Parents Choose. They really, really, really stepped up. And I mean, they were very persistent. And it wasn't just about their kids. It was about all of the children in the district because they understood, just we spoke about, the poverty, the generational cycle of, students, incarceration, all this stuff can play a part
Sure.
of a child's developmental, success and mental success because it just was not right. And so they just stepped up and said, hey, we're going to have to be a voice for the voiceless. And they knew I was trying that. And without them and without them being behind me, I would have probably thrown the towel in a long time ago. I mean, it's been a hard fight.
And so where are we today? You said that the kids are going back to school.
Yeah, so we phased our elementary students back in on Tuesday.
Okay.
So I'm really excited about that. And now we're going to be phasing in our 5th and 9th graders back on the 18th. So it's like a weekly phase in. I think the 25th will be we'll be doing our 8th grade, 7th, 8th grade, 6th, 7th, 8th, and then the high schoolers will go back on March 3rd.
Okay. And so are they going back 5 days a week or?
Yes, they will be going back 5 days a week.
Okay.
Now, of course, as they say, if the metrics stay where they are, then we'll stay in person. So my thought is we're going to stay in person. We got vaccines that are coming down the pike now.
Are the teachers vaccinated?
They will be. Actually, today starts they can register. They can start registration.
Okay.
And next Saturday, they should be able to get started getting vaccinated.
Okay, so the teachers are being vaccinated. We know that through science that children aren't super spreaders. As they're back right now, I guess if the numbers though start going back up, which I think that there's a good chance that they will, are you thinking ahead? I hate to say it, I do believe it.
We have 11 weeks left. I think it's maybe 11 weeks. We're going to be going into this mid-February, March, and school is out end of May. I think we can do this. I think we should not go back virtual for those students who need in person. I think we should follow the CDC guidelines. I think we should follow the protocols, and I think we should follow the science and get the experts involved because all the other schools are doing it, and the reason why they're doing it because they follow protocol, and that's why they're open.
Yeah, that's interesting that you have all the surrounding counties that are back into school. And why do you think Davidson, of all counties, why do you think Davidson County was making them stay home?
It's just the fear, and I think the teachers unions just really did it. I think they just had a lot of power, and because I think they influenced Dr. Battle to bring them home the first time. And we did have our elementary students back in October that went about 6, almost 7 weeks. And here we go. They start coming again, saying, picketing or voicing their concerns about bring them back home. It's not safe. You're using us as guinea pigs. I mean, those kind of things that were said by by the MENEA president. And so that was really, I couldn't believe it. I was like,
using them as guinea pigs when that's strong words because here's the problem I have with it. The reason I don't want to attack anybody's character is because that's attacking your character.
Yeah.
You're saying yes, like I would use a child as a guinea pig. Like that's a pretty strong statement from somebody.
Yeah. Who's supposed to be in leadership? Who's supposed to love kids?
Yeah.
Who's supposed to want the best? I've been doing this since March with my child care academy. I never closed my doors since March. Never had one case of COVID-19 from any of my students. I had one case from a parent who was tested positive while we were on Christmas break. She contacted me, told me she tested positive. She's going to quarantine. Her and her daughter was going to stay away until that time was up. And that's it. I get it. I understand it. I've been in it too. But I know it can be done.
Yeah. So who made the guinea pig statement?
Amanda Kale, she's the MENEA president. Yeah, and she's been making these kind of statements and using those adjectives to describe, the fear of not getting the teachers back in the classroom. So, it's been an ongoing, attempt to dismantle our school system.
I mean, I could really see her argument if you were making all the teachers go back, even with the pre-existing conditions. I could see like, hey, you really don't want to put somebody with all these
Right.
pre-existing conditions in that situation.
Absolutely.
But I don't see the argument if, the data has been there for a long time as far as who's most at risk, who's not at very high risk, and I don't see how you can really. I don't see the argument. I'd love to have her on and get her her side of it too, because maybe she's got some points that we don't know about.
Yeah, I mean, I just, I always like to give anybody, an opportunity to make their case, say, because I like to listen, I like to hear it again. My background's in healthcare. I love, my research and being able to, find ways that we can live healthy. That's what I love to do, So I always want to hear what your reasonings are, or tell me what are you seeing so that I can see it. And I haven't seen any of it. And so that's the reason why her message has been discredited so many times. And I will tell you, the teachers union make up 30% of the teachers. Not all teachers are part of the union. And majority of the teachers that I spoke to wanted to go back in person. They knew the virtual space was not working. And I just talked to a teacher today who says she absolutely can't sleep at night because she hates it that much.
So is the you said Amanda? What's her?
Kale.
Is Amanda Kale? Is that the one that said you threatened her online?
Yes.
Okay, so did you threaten her?
No, absolutely
What was
not.
said? I remember seeing it on the story. I didn't do my homework. How did that come about?
So I was reading again. She's been basically has had an agenda to keep the students virtually, pretty much the rest of this whole school year, by her fear tactics. And I saw it on Facebook, and I guess I got a little frustrated, and I made a comment. And basically said, I'm tired of it. I'm tired of you doing this to keep our students back. And if you don't like your job, then quit, at this point. So from there, of course, it went crazy because I never fight on Facebook. I never make those kind of comments. I've always believed in being positive, a scripture here and there,
Right.
And then here it is, Fran said something and it just went crazy. And as a school board member, it just kind of went crazy, So, you had a lot of teachers that did chime in that I was very disappointed to see or hear how they were feeling about our students. And to me, that was one of those red flags. If you really feel that way, then you shouldn't be in front of our kids. I wouldn't want you teaching my child if you're feeling this way,
How were they feeling?
Well, they were saying that they felt like, schools were used as babysitters, that parents weren't doing their job. I mean, it was just really a lot of attacks that I was really shocked about.
Gotcha. Yeah. And what did they say you threatened her about? Like physically threatened, or was it like
I guess because I said if you didn't like your day job, then quit.
Oh,
So
okay.
they felt like that was a threat, and that school board members shouldn't say those kind of things. And
I see. I mean, we grew up in Nashville. I was threatened with a lot more than that. A few times. But
no, me too. But
it's hard for me to understand a lot of the what's PC or what's not PC because I haven't been in the system. So a lot of the stuff's very foreign to me. As far as you can't say this or you can say that. I don't know. I'm just doing the best I can, trying to be kind to people and figure things out. But that doesn't seem like a threat. But I'm curious to see where she felt threatened, like verbally, physically,
Yeah, I mean, she just for the record, she did file an ethics complaint with the board, and it was no merit to it.
Okay.
So, it was a lot of talk, media coverage on that, but I had one reporter say, "Well, Fran, if you if she filed 2 or 3 against you, how do you feel? And I said, well, I don't care.
Right.
It's about the children at this point. And I don't, if I have to stick my neck out, if I have to get into some trouble, which I didn't think I was going to be, I'll be vindicated from it. But it was just me saying, I got to do this. I can't stop. We're too far ahead now to get these students back in school because we were seeing the detriment. It was just,
It's too obvious.
It was too obvious.
One of my favorite quotes is, the only time meaningful change occurs is when the pain of remaining the same is greater than the pain of changing. And it sounds like the pain just got so much from, the students and parents and that it overcame the politics behind it.
Yeah.
Whether they knew that the politics were behind their decisions. A lot of times you get caught up in politics.
Right.
And I have friends in politics, and sometimes they don't even realize that they're playing a game. Like, hey, I've told my friends a number of times, hey, stop playing that political BS with me right now. Like, please, don't give me that line.
Right.
Like, we're talking here. This isn't this isn't public. But you get kind of caught up in that.
Yeah.
Your talking points.
Right. And in the mental health, I can go back and I can share a personal experience. I mean, I saw it from my own children, my 9th and 12th grader. My 12th grader so much more, where he had suicidal thoughts, where we were called to pick him up because the police had him. And he called the suicidal hotline to get help. And he was roaming the neighborhood, and they knew where he was.
Good.
And they called me, my husband. My husband got there very quickly. But Daniel was really hurting and suffering inside. And I thought I could help him, which we are. We're working on getting him, he's therapy and things like that. But that's what was happening. This is what's happening to our students. And it wasn't just about Daniel. It's about many hundreds of Daniels.
There's so many.
It's so many.
Like that.
Yeah. And we're talking about 8th graders, 1st graders, 2nd grader. When I tell you just being on virtual, the mental strain that was doing to their bodies, they were just so fatigued from it. Because I had virtual learners in my child care academy. I always believe in, if you're going to talk the talk, you're going to walk the walk. I always believe in trying to help where I can. And it was just really hard. It was really hard to watch.
I mean, that makes sense why you fought so hard, because you have a firsthand experience. It's not some data saying that, more kids are suicidal or those type of things. It's a real life experience with a mental illness going on, where they're facing suicidal thoughts, largely due to a lockdown and separation. And you just put your foot down and said, I'm not taking it anymore.
I didn't want to lose my own son. But nevertheless, what about those students who didn't have support?
Yes.
So I thought about those students, and I kept thinking, I'm not their mama, but I'm going to do everything I can like their mom. So that's why I kept fighting and kept going. And there were lots of sleepless nights, but I just prayed, and I just kept saying, just give me the strength. And I couldn't stop thinking about these kids. And so, here we are. They're going back to school.
Well, Fran, I appreciate you taking a stand for the kids. There's nothing like a mother's love, and it sounds like you use that mother's love for the kids in Nashville. And I hope, though, now that we're possibly through, kids are back to school, we can actually work on building bridges again. Because, I like I said, I don't like to necessarily attack people's intentions, and it would be great if we could figure out a way, if you could figure out a way to build those bridges, because there is animosity, and there was a lot of fear, and fear is a hell of a drug. It's just, you start taking that drug, and it becomes becomes this thing like, oh, I just need to be afraid. And when you have the TV on, and the stories are looping about COVID deaths and this and that, and there's a lot of built up fear. And I think there needs to be more grace. I think we're missing grace. So I hope that now, you can work on maybe building that bridge back, where people might have taken what you were doing from one way. I can tell why you were doing it. You shared your son's experience. There's nothing like that. And you better believe that Fran Bush is going to fight for her child and the children of Nashville.
Yeah. And it's all about absolutely. And I woke up one morning and I told my husband, I said, why can't we just love? Why can't we just love again? Because it is about, building bridges and bringing, as adults, we should know better. And when you have students that got caught up in the equation of adult stuff, then that's when we lose sight.
Yeah.
And so I have always said, you can forgive. You can definitely give a person a chance again. Of course, that's who I am. And it's about now just trying to heal, because I think we all need to heal from this, because we had to fight so hard to get these students back in, person safely. So, you just have to take a little time and breathe and just kind of, take a step back and just say, okay, you have to reflect, and you have to say, okay, what do we do moving forward?
Sure.
Because I just believe in any storm that we go through, we should be able to bounce back. And I use the analogy of a storm. When hurricanes come and you have those palm trees that move back and forth, but when the storm is over, it stands right back up again. And that's what we have to do in this city as leaders. And we have to make those decisions even through a storm. And we shouldn't stay stagnant. We should be able to move forward.
Absolutely. Well, Fran, thank you so much for talking to me on this podcast. It's a pleasure, and I appreciate you. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. This has been great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.